Hey guys, what's going on? I got another one of these Delta theory videos to push out. Just want to reiterate again, I'm just really blown away by all the support I've been getting on these videos. It's been pretty awesome to think that people are enjoying watching these, and I'm going to keep trying to think of things to put out and share some of my thoughts. If there's anything you guys can think of that you guys want to talk about and discuss, and we can kind of use this as a kind of like a forum of ideas. I'd love to hear what you guys think. This video today is going to be talking about something that really is kind of like a thing that people are going to have to flush out themselves, and it's just something that I'll throw out there, and it's going to be up to you guys to make the most of it. But what that is kind of like the secret of low tide. I mentioned probably in all my videos, but specifically in the last, I know I made a note of it. The delta and the low tide go hand in hand because of what you see on the low tide. And that was something that was told to me for a long time from someone I respect, and that was that you're going to learn a lot on low tide. And a lot of people are good at going out to the delta on high tide and just chucking up into the tules, chucking up into the trees and whatever, and just catching fish. And when the tide sucks out, they just feel like they don't know what to do. And there's a lot of people that just don't like low tide. I don't know why that is. If I had the choice between fishing a low and a high tide, I'm going to fish the low tide most of the time. And it really doesn't matter. I mean, they're not necessarily better than one another, but I just think that the odds stack in your favor on low tide, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, and just some other concepts I think that are important in regards to low tide. One of the first reasons that low tide is important and why I think it's better, we'll just kind of like find a random flat just around big break. So if you're fishing on high tide, this whole flat is going to be underwater. There's going to be fish that are everywhere on this flat. They're going to be on the bank. They're going to be in the grass. They're going to be on this little pipe. They're going to be on the edge of this deal. Like, they're just going to be all over the place. And it's really going to just be a matter of like chance and the sense that you're catching one. And that's why a lot of times on high tide, things like topwater and a chatterbait and different things are so good, because you're covering water, covering the expanse of this flat, and that's how you're running into those fish. Now, on the contrary, low tide, this whole flat sucks out, and now all those fish have no choice but to move to this edge right here. To me, it's almost like a cheat code. I mean, you literally know that all of the fish have just moved to the edge of this flat and have vacated the bank. You now know where the fish have to be, and they pretty much have one choice, and that's to either bury themselves in the grass and associate to the edge, or physically be on the edge, or maybe if you really want to get out there, they might even vacate that bank and move into a separate area very close by to this, but that could be a topic for another video. Those are the types of fish that you're going to punch. You're going to catch them on a drop shot on the weed edge. You're going to catch them on a wacky rig Senko. You're going to throw your chatterbait, but now you're going to sink it down into 6 or 7 feet of water on the edge of that grass and reel it in. But those fish are moving, and they have no choice, and that's part of what makes it nice. The other thing that's cool is you can see those anomalies that we've been talking about. You can see those hard bottom holes. You can see that grass edge. You can see that deep water, whatever it is you're looking for. You can see that now that it's low tide. And to build on that concept of seeing things, I don't know why this is, but it's just a fact. On the delta, the incoming tide pretty much, maybe I shouldn't say a fact, but especially in the summer, and I feel like just historically in general, high tide pushes dirty water in from the ocean, I guess. I actually don't know where it's come from, but for whatever reason, when incoming tide comes in, dirty water comes into the system. And I have really noticed this up north fishing up by wimpies. And it's all over the place, but this place really shows this. You'll be up here on incoming tide, and it's like 3 foot of water. 2 to 3 foot viz. I shouldn't say water. 2 to 3 foot of visibility in the water. And then for whatever reason, when this tide starts sucking out, especially towards the end of that tide, it is as clear as the eye can see. I mean, it is crystal clear. And I have noticed it other places of the Delta, so I think it applies. But generally speaking, incoming tide is dirty. It's bringing in the silt. It's bringing in whatever it's flushing in. And then for whatever reason, when the outgo comes, the outgo clears everything up. And I want to really make a note of that. That is the time to do the seeing. That is the time to do the looking. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in the summertime that I've just found like a random spot, like let's just say right out here in front of Big Break. And I've brought my boat up into the shallows on low tide. And now I start to see bass, like physically see them, and see hard bottom, see holes, see logs, see weird things I didn't know existed. And that's really the time to find some of these really unique areas that I've been talking about. And sometimes it's time to locate fish. I'm not really going to go into the specifics of where, but you can do stuff like this. So we'll just kind of like find a random spot. It looks to me like there's some grass here offshore in the center of the channel, right? Okay. I would find an area like this that's only visible from low tide. And I would find like a school of really big fish on this island. Like you're just looking around and there's a 6-pounder, there's a 7-pounder, there's an 8-pounder. And you're like, oh my God, like there's giants all over this island right now. And they're just swimming around on this sand off in the middle of nowhere. And legitimately, no one knows about this but you. Maybe like some other dudes. I mean, everybody knows everything, but you might have just found something that's like super, super special. And that's the point of me saying like, you guys are going to have to look for this yourselves kind of thing, because I really think it is something where not a lot of people know about some of these spots. There are like these sandbars that can just be out in the middle of no man's land, whether it be a pond or the river or whatnot. And these big fish are associating to it, especially in the summertime, almost like a ledge, like you'd see in a lake. You know, we're not talking about live scope in this video, but like more and more you're seeing these dudes catching these giant fish offshore on these ledges or these trees or whatever it is they're doing. And I think in a way that you can see stuff like that in the Delta where these big fish group together, like 20, 30, 40 fish, like big ones, like on these offshore areas. And these are all things you're going to see on low tide. And they don't have to be islands. Like I'm saying, on the contrary, you're over here in Big Break and you're just looking at some specific area and you start seeing all these giant fish. It's just information. And the reason I'm making this video and I think it's important is once you recognize that those fish are there, you can attempt to catch them, obviously, which I know sounds a little silly, but for someone like me, you know, just your average dude out fishing on the Delta. I'm not like some pro bass fisherman or anything. Like, it's hard for me to catch these big fish. And a lot of times I'm not catching these big fish and I just don't even know where they are to begin with, right? So one of the starting places for me is like, hey, I just saw these fish with my own eyes because I haven't been able to catch them. Well, at least now that you know there's big fish in this area, you can try and figure out what you need to do to catch them. And that's where it comes back to what I've said time and time again in these videos is you need to hit that spot on every single tide you can until you figure out when those fish bite. But it's that low tide, the secret of the low tide, that's probably going to be the title of this video, is that is what told you that information. You would have never known that those fish were there unless you saw them on that low tide. And you also wouldn't have the opportunity to fish for them on a different tide. It's one thing if you just stumbled across a bank and you just stuck a couple big ones, and now you know there's big ones on that bank and you can go back and fish it. But it's another thing to go by on the low tide and actually see them and then know they're there without actually having caught them yet. There was a specific spot like 2 summers ago up north that I was fishing. We can just use this Thule Point as an example. I had found this weird sand spot on the end of this island, and there was like 35 pounds for 5 just associating this spot, just 7 and 8 pounders just like sitting on the end of this, and I was seeing them all the time. And it's kind of silly, and it I don't know why it took me so many times, but it's just the nature of the beast. I legitimately went to the spot like 8 trips in a row, just like on every tide I could try and figure out, and I just couldn't get anything. Like I'd catch like 2 pounders, 3 pounders, and I'm like, I know there's giants on here. I literally see them. Like I've seen them. They're still there. I just can't catch them for whatever reason. And then finally, there was one morning where I pulled up to that spot and I stuck like 2 5s. And I would have never done that if I hadn't seen those fish on that low tide. And I still don't completely understand why that particular day was the day, but it's one of those things where it's just a timing thing. And the low tide is going to give you the opportunity to locate some of those spots. You know, a concept that's used in all of bass fishing is like a milk run. You establish a milk run of areas, and they're areas that you know big fish live in, and you're going to prioritize your time during your day to those areas. And it could be something like running the tide, obviously, is a situation in the Delta that people do that you can't really do in a lake. But a milk run in a lake in the Delta is the same thing. You're going to run all those big fish areas when you think the prime tide is, just how in a lake you're going to run all those big fish areas when you think it's optimal in the day of the lake. And one of the ways that you might find those areas in a lake is you throw like a big glide bait or something, and you find really large fish associating to an area. That's one way you can see them. But that's the thing with the Delta is you don't need to do that. You can literally just go down the bank and look around with your eyes, and you can find these areas that these big fish are. And that's something that I will say last year I had a little bit of trouble with compared to the past, was just seeing those fish. And I think it really comes down to just I was not going to the right places, not finding the right areas. But this is something that anyone can do, especially when the tide is kind of like slack and low and garbage and there's nothing to do. Take the time to go look around and just do a little investigating. Like a lot of times when I do this, I'll just blind cast a Senko or something around while I'm just like looking around, because I just know that right now is not the time anyway. But use that as an opportunity to try and find some of these areas and then go back and do your thing. But that's just something to think about. I really think it's underutilized. I think people are afraid of low tide sometimes. Low tide's also a time to find things as far as like from a navigational perspective that you don't want to hit. A lot of times, if I've never ran through an area on low tide, I literally won't, because I don't want to hit something. But I will try and fish through that area, not like drive through it, and just look around and be like, do I think I can get my boat through here? Do I think I can be safe? Those are the kind of decisions you can make to prolong your experience on the Delta. One of my buddies actually was ejected in a boating accident on the Delta, and it just has to do with just being safe out here and knowing where you're running. A lot of these big ponds, you'll see people running back and forth through them, but just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean you should do it. You need to be confident with where you're going. Realize the Delta changes on a yearly and daily basis. And, while you're looking for fish on the low tide, you can also be looking for hazards and places that, you would feel comfortable running your boat through. That's another thing you guys can kind of think about. Like I said in the beginning, I really appreciate everyone's support. I'm trying to come up with some ideas for the Delta and keep pushing out some of these different video ideas and see what you guys like. Appreciate everybody. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.